Hi, I'm Mayor Anthony Foxx, and welcome to The Point. Today we have a wonderful, wonderful segment with the director of the Charlotte Export Center, Greg Sizemore, who is a great friend and someone who's working every day to help grow business in Charlotte.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Greg, can you talk about the work of the center and sort of what its raison d'etre is?
Sure.
Yeah.
The Export Assistance Center here in Charlotte is part of the U.S. Department of Commerce's U.S. Commercial Service. And we're one of about 160 offices around the world focused on really one thing, and that's promoting U.S. exports. We provide marketing assistance, market intelligence for companies who are looking to enter the export business or looking to increase the number of markets that they're exporting to. We also provide assistance to them in locating qualified buyers overseas and then introducing them to those qualified buyers in country overseas. And then one of the other things that we do is helping companies with getting out of trouble. Sometimes a company will run into issues overseas, and our presence overseas really helps in helping solve issues, maybe getting something through customs, or there's a discrepancy in paperwork, getting product into country.
You know, there's a lot of conversation about how we're going to get jobs back in the U.S., how we're going to get the economy going again. And exports have been part of that conversation. Tell me why exports are important. Exports
are key to the recovery that we're experiencing right now. Exports have been one of the strong points. If you look at the economic recovery since 2008, exports have been increasing. A lot of reasons for that. Probably shouldn't go into the economic reasons behind it, but I think a big part of that is what we're seeing in the manufacturing sector, is a renaissance that we're seeing in U.S. manufacturing. And those companies are able to compete on quality overseas. You hear a lot about China and competing against China. U.S. companies do not compete against China on price. They compete on quality. So I think one of the reasons why you're seeing a renaissance in manufacturing, a renaissance in exporting, is that U.S. companies are able to compete based on the quality and the innovation of their products.
Speaking of manufacturing, obviously North Carolina historically has been a huge manufacturing state. We're the second in lost manufacturing jobs between 2000 and 2010. Yeah. Is there a real opportunity for North Carolina and specifically Charlotte to grow manufacturing jobs?
Definitely, definitely. Charlotte is a community that has gotten it, that they need to innovate, need to look at other industries. The energy sector is a great example. Environmental technologies is another great example. Medical technologies is another great example. You've got existing industry here in the Charlotte region, companies that we work with on a daily basis, who are maybe 10 years ago were in another industry, and now they're shifting to different industries because they got it. They realize that if I stay in this manufacturing sector or this industry that may be in decline, I'll be out of business. So you see a lot of companies here locally in Charlotte who have gone into medical technologies is a great example, where they've figured out a way that they can apply the processes and their knowledge in a particular industry to medical technology, whether it's lightweight materials or things like that. So I think a lot of what you see here in Charlotte and a lot of opportunities that you see in Charlotte are companies that 10 years ago, if they would have stuck with their business model that they had 10 years ago, they'd be out of business right now. And a lot of them are surviving and even thriving through innovative products and getting those innovative products in overseas markets.
So one of the things I constantly talk about in Charlotte is the fact that we have 90% of our jobs are based in small business. And one of the things we've been trying to do in Charlotte through Export Charlotte, through Export North Carolina, Export USA, is to reach out to the small business owner and say, hey, exports isn't just for the big guys, it's for you too. So tell me how do you make the case to a small business, and what kind of special things do you do for small business?
Yeah, well, most of the companies that we help are small business. Our agency is really there for the small guys who can't afford to set up an export department. They may have one person running that export department, and in some cases it's the president of the company who's running that, or some person who's over national sales. So we're there to help that small company. In many cases, we serve as the export department for these companies. So we can help a company develop a strategy for exports. Sometimes that company may need to take that to their board to say, okay, we need to budget a certain amount of dollars for export promotion for the following year. So we help them with that. We can also help them identify good qualified buyers overseas. U.S. small companies here locally, the ones that succeed are the ones that are willing to get on a plane, go overseas, and get face-to-face with qualified overseas buyers. And that's really what we do best at the Export Assistance Center, is helping weed out companies that may not be good business partners overseas in a fairly short amount of time to these companies, so they're not wasting their time opening up, well, used to be they would open up the Yellow Pages, and now they're doing Google searches trying to find overseas buyers. But we can really shorten that time process in getting to qualified overseas buyers.
So tell me, give me a success story. Give me an example of a company that's really been able to make that bridge overseas.
Yeah, great success stories here local. There are two actually local companies that have done a fantastic job with exporting and have actually increased the percentage of their exports over 50% of their sales. One company is a company called Slade Inc. Slade Inc. first came to the Charlotte Chamber of Commerce back in 1993, and they were interested in exporting. They had made a couple of sales overseas, and they decided, hey, we want to structure our export sales. We want to figure out a way that we can make this a more part of our sales strategy overall. So they came to us, and first we provided some lists of potential buyers overseas, and they realized that, like most companies, you know, they didn't, at the time, they didn't realize that they need to get over on a plane and go and meet with qualified buyers. They figured that maybe that list of qualified buyers would work, so they tried to make some phone calls and send some faxes. This was back when faxes are still in use, and it didn't work. A couple of years later, they came back to me and said, Greg, this list that you gave us, it ain't working. We got to do something different. So I said, well, you got to get on a plane and go overseas and meet with your qualified buyers. So, you know, luckily they took that mantra and they ran with it, and 60% of their sales right now are export sales. Key to this company, it employs 14 people. Key to their survival, they make a high-tech solution used in manufacturing processes. It's a typical U.S. story where a U.S. company has developed a solution, a high innovative solution that, you know, is applicable around the world. Another example is a sock company. You wouldn't think about socks right now being made in the USA even, much less exported, but there's a company called Defeat Socks. They make socks for cycling. Recently won the President's Export Award, Excellence in Export Award, E-Awards, like we like to call it in the biz. They've also have increased their sales. Most of their sales are also going overseas. They don't really focus on trade shows here domestically. They focus on trade shows in Germany, trade shows in Asia, to get in front of the cycling community around the world. Cycling's big everywhere, and their socks are high-quality socks that folks are willing to pay maybe a little bit more money for. Like other U.S. companies, they're competing on the quality of their product around the world.
That's amazing. And staying in this manufacturing space, one of the issues we continue to deal with in North Carolina is our transportation infrastructure, which is a huge part of, it's one thing to have a good produced here, it's another thing to get it somewhere around the world. And can you talk about how we stack up against other areas across the country in terms of our transportation infrastructure?
Well, you know, Charlotte is a transportation hub, and I think a lot of why we see companies deciding to set up shop in Charlotte is because of the transportation hub that we currently have here. How that stacks up nationally and globally, it is a challenge. I'll be frank with you. Charlotte is a little bit further away from the ports, but they do have choice of ports. North Carolina Port is a fantastic facility, especially for bulk items, and they have a fantastic program, incentive program for North Carolina companies to use in North Carolina ports, and we're working on trying to increase access to the North Carolina ports. A lot of Charlotte area companies are also using the Charleston port as well, and some products are going up out of Norfolk if it's roll-on, roll-off, and then maybe points further north. But Charlotte infrastructure, the transportation infrastructure, is why we have a lot of the companies that we have set up shop here. A lot of foreign companies are setting up shop in Charlotte, have set up shop in Charlotte to take advantage of the transportation advantages that Charlotte offers. And many of those companies are looking to export beyond Charlotte. They're looking at places in the Western Hemisphere. They may be a European company. They set up shop in Charlotte in order to take advantage of free trade agreements that we may have with Canada or Mexico, and we hopefully have more free trade agreements online soon. We already have 3 that came online last year with Colombia, Panama, and Korea. And 2 of those, Panama and Colombia, obviously the transportation hub will benefit those foreign companies who have set up shop here. Now they can export beyond Charlotte, beyond NAFTA, down to those other areas.
How important are things like, for instance, the intermodal facility at the airport, high-speed rail, which will be coming over the next few years? What will that do for us?
Yeah, that's critical. You know, containerization of U.S. exports is something that came online many years ago, and it continues to be key to the ability for U.S. companies to export. The ability to put your product in a container here in Charlotte, and that container stays, you know, intact all the way to the port. That's critical to Charlotte area exporters. So intermodal is key. Can't have enough of it. So thank you for pushing that. But yeah, it's big for a company to have a container roll up to their back dock, load that container, have that container maybe go to another company, completely fill it, less than container load, fill that container at another facility here in Charlotte, put it on an intermodal, a train here in Charlotte, send it down to the port. That's key. That's key to Charlotte area exports.
We're only growing our capacity to create more export activity here, which is fantastic. What other opportunities do you see for us to expand export? Where are some places you think we can improve our ability to do it?
Well, I think for small-sized companies that we run into, I think where they need the most help is finding qualified buyers overseas. Maybe secondarily, first of all, they need to learn about the export process, and providing opportunities for local Charlotte area companies to learn about the export process is probably the first step. The second step is, once they're educated and feel comfortable and confident enough to go overseas, is making sure they're meeting with the right people. So the first step, I think, is us increasing more opportunity for companies to learn about the export process. Through Export University, there is a program that we'll be doing here along with you here in Charlotte next year that provide companies an opportunity to learn more about the process.
Can you talk a little bit about Export University? How can people find it?
Sure. We have a website, export.gov/North Carolina. There's also, Export University is put on by a group called the District Export Council. There are roughly 60 export councils around the country made up of volunteers from the export community. They're usually executives with a lot of knowledge and experience in exporting. And they provide this Export University opportunity for companies to learn about the export process. We do about 5 to 8 of them around North Carolina every year. We'll do at least one in Charlotte next year, next spring.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Greg Sizemore, thanks for being with us.
Thanks
really
for having
appreciate
me.
your time, for sure.
Appreciate it.
This is Anthony Foxx. Thank you for joining us on The Point.